A line. It's a blurred smear of gray and orange where once green forests stood and rivers ran. Now, those rivers are nothing but ribbons of poisoned mud, snaking through valleys carved by drought and neglect. Every dawn feels like an intrusion. Another day in a world I barely recognize. I'm broadcasting from a makeshift studio built in the bowels of an old school building. Desks lie overturned, their legs snapped like brittle bones. The chalkboards still bear lesson plans, fractured math equations and half-erased doodles, memories of a life that vanished almost overnight. The generator hums, fueling ancient tubes. The glow dimly. Beyond these walls, the streets are silent except for the scuttling of scavengers and the distant roar of collapsed highways. Buildings lean at impossible angles, steel girders twisted like spent shell casings. Heat domes have become our new seasons. Summers scorch the earth until the pavement buckles, and concrete melts into puddles of tar. Winters arrive as sudden shards of cold, frost that cracks throats and shatters bones. There are no more gentle transitions, no soft mornings. Weather is a weapon. I remember the floods that swallowed entire suburbs last spring. The deluge came almost without warning, swallowing basements, tearing off roofs. Bodies floated in the currents, anonymous ghosts carried away before anyone could mourn. With the old climate gone, the few survivors cluster in pockets of relative safety. Makeshift camps have sprung up where water still flows, though none of it is clean. We filter, boil, pray. It isn't laced with radiation or chemical runoff. Some camps trade medicine for batteries, others barter food for fuel. There are communities, fragile, alliances of farmers who've learned to coax mushrooms from irradiated soil, or engineers who jury-rig wind turbines from aircraft parts. But more often, there are the raiders, scavenger gangs that prowl the wastelands, brutal and organized, taking without mercy. Government is a memory. The old districts still bear the ghost of bureaucracy, rusting town halls, boarded-up police, stations, empty courtrooms where no verdicts are ever read. Relief never came. Aid convoys were intercepted or turned back by bureaucratic collapse at every checkpoint. Now, authority lies with whoever has ammunition and fuel. In the north, a self-styled council claims territory around the Great Dam, rationing water to its clients and shooting anyone else who approaches. To the south, masked marauders patrol in convoys of armored trucks, loudspeakers blaring propaganda in a broken dialect of the old tongue. Nature, too, has gone mad. Trees leaf out in clusters where radiation lingers, their bark mottled with unnatural hue. Animals have either adapted, mutating in bizarre, unpredictable ways, or fled. The last flock of cranes I saw circled overhead, their wings panicked silhouettes against the roiling sky. I've spotted rats the size of house cats and crows so pale they look salt-dusted. Sometimes I catch sight of a deer, gaunt and still, staring back with eyes that seem to ask, "Is this all there is?" Even our landmarks are unrecognizable. The tower that once marked the center of this town is now a skeletal core, glass blown out like candle wax. The riverfront boardwalk has collapsed into the water, its planks drifting downstream like the pages of a burnt-out book. The old library's facade crumbles, but inside, ink-stained pages cling to moldy shelves. History's last witness to our downfall. I come here sometimes, crouching in the hush, run my fingers over spines that survived a world ending. And yet I broadcast. In the darkness, my voice is a lifeline. I describe stacks of canned corn in one camp, the survival of a stray dog in another, the rumor of seeds that might still germinate. I speak of nothing more uplifting than a shared cigarette or a safe passage through a radiation hotspot, because hope doesn't have to be grand. It only needs to be small enough to burn. As I crack another log on the fire tonight, I'll tell you what I see. Two flickering flames fighting the dark together. I am Rowan Vale, though out here names mean less than the next ration of water. Before all this, I was an environmental engineer. Someone who believed that with enough data and design, we could bend nature to our will without consequence. I thought I understood balance. I was wrong. Now my world is measured in broadcasts. The crackle of static, the dull glow of my transmitter, the hum of salvation when my words reach another soul. Each morning I pedal the generator, 45 hard revolutions before the coils warm up and the microphone lights blink alive. My legs ache from the strain, but I haven't felt real muscle pain since that first week of the meltdown, when fleeing refugees trampled me in a panic for clean water. I should have died that day, but something pulled me back. A journal I'd been keeping in my pack, the blank pages still waiting. Survival out here is more than water and scraps of canned food. It's memory and purpose. I rise before dawn when the air is marginally cooler to rummage through the Radio Shack's supplies. I tally our fuel for the generator, old engine oil traded from a scavenger named Hector, who once ran a taxi service, and inspect the antenna, its wires frayed by gusts of ash-laden wind. Then I broadcast myself, a voice in the void, offering whatever tidbit of hope I can scrape together. Camp Meridian, 2 kilometers east, I'll say. Water still flows at the southern well. Share this message if you're alive. Between sessions, I wander outside with my Geiger counter, rattling at my belt. I chart radiation hotspots, marking safe paths for anyone desperate enough to venture beyond the ruins. I listen for other signals, faint bleeps on the dial that might be more than interference. Once, I picked up the distant melody of an old folk song. I sat until the battery died, letting the notes wind around my chest. It's how I remind myself that music once existed. What drives me isn't glory or duty. It's the need to know I'm not the last heartbeat on Earth. I've seen too many bodies to believe in ghosts, but I cling to voices. If I die without leaving one behind, who will hear the echo? Each transmission is my testament. I was here. I survived. And I wanted someone else to know they weren't alone. I lost my family in those early days. My sister Mara was a climate scientist researching sea level rise. She stayed at her coastal lab, long after warnings flashed across screens. I begged her to come inland. She refused. When the reactors melted and the megastorms hit, the coast became a cauldron. I found her photograph pinned to my fridge weeks later. The edges singed, but her smile untouched. I talk to it sometimes, on air, as if she can hear me. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," I whisper, and then I carry on, because apologies don't fill water jugs, and regret won't keep the antenna upright. There was a man named Salim, who taught me to coax sprouts from irradiated soil. He mixed charcoal and compost from the old city park, calling it alchemy. Under his care, peas and lettuce took fragile root. I learned to test for radioactivity in each harvest, to rinse and rinse until the greens glowed no brighter than the ash around us. Salim didn't trust broadcasts. He believed in walls and fences. But when marauders stole half his crop, he staggered into my shack, desperation in his eyes. I offered him a place on air, a chance to guide others through gardening and wreckage. He hesitated, then agreed. We co-hosted our first show under a blood-red sky, his voice steady as he gave planting tips. 2 weeks later, a supply caravan rumbled through. Followers of Salim's show bringing seeds and fertilizer as thanks. I realized then that hope can be cultivated like a garden. Yet every day is an exercise in mourning. I wander the hallway, outside my room, a narrow corridor lined with makeshift offices, and stop before each door. One by one, I open them. The medic's quarters, stripped of bandages. The map room, its charts torn or burned. The library annex, shelves sagging under the weight of wet, mildewed books. I trace the edges of spaces where people once lived, worked, argued, loved. I carry those shadows in my heart like stones. Still, I press onward. I've stitched together alliances with fellow broadcasters. Lena in the desert encampment, whose voice crackles but whose knowledge of water purification keeps dozens alive. Jin at the mountain refuge, who trades real-time weather updates for fresh batteries. When our signals overlap, we greet each other. Rowan here, safety in grid square 8-9er. Rowan, we hear you, same transmit. Static breaks, and then we share the horizon. These small connections stitch a map of humanity that I hold against the dark. Night is the hardest. The furnace sun finally dips behind ash clouds, but the temperature barely budges. I climb onto the roof. If the antenna goes, transmissions end. I peer out at the wasteland. Ragged hills, skeletal trees, the distant glow of wildfires still licking the sky. The wind carries ash like snow, settling on my hair, my clothes, my lungs. I close my eyes and imagine Mara beside me, her laughter, echoing in the void. I imagine a time before Meltdown, before everything cracked. Then I turn back to the microphone. When you hear this, I say into the night, know that I'm still searching. Tomorrow I'll pedal again. I'll chart a new path. And I'll keep talking because as long as we can speak, we can believe in tomorrow. I am Rowan Vale, engineer, survivor, voice of the lost. I hold on to hope like a lifeline, and I broadcast it into the silence, waiting for an answer. The countdown began long before the sirens. I heard it in the tremor of the ground, felt it in the buzz of the Geiger counter strapped to my belt. 10 days ago, Reactor 4 at the old nuclear plant, already crippled by heat waves and neglected maintenance, finally gave way. A meltdown so fierce it vaporized containment walls, shot radiation into the stratosphere like a twisted fireworks display. I remember the moment the sky lit up, a roiling cloud of radioactive steam glowing sickly, green against the ash-gray heavens. Since then, survival has become a daily battle against an invisible enemy. Every morning, I step outside my broadcast shack into a world gone mad. Temperatures hover above 115 degree Wang, 46 degree Wang. The air quivers with heat, warping what little is left of the horizon. Sunlight filtering through the radioactive cloud feels like a blowtorch on exposed flesh. Radiation readings spike unpredictably. One moment the Geiger clicks calmly at 200 USVHR, microsieverts per hour. The next it leaps to $2,000 USVHR, under a drifting plume. For reference, a single chest X-ray delivers about 100 USV. At current levels, just 1 hour outside without shielding risks. Acute radiation sickness. Fallout patterns shift with the gusting winds. I track them using my weather vane microanalyzer rig. Wind speed, direction, barometric pressure, all. Feeding into a makeshift fallout map. Yesterday, a sudden westerly gust sent a fresh wave of cesium-137 and iodine-131 skimming across the ruined farmlands. In a matter of hours, our safe zones turned toxic. I couldn't warn everyone. In time, rivers once teeming with fish now flow with radioactive sludge. My Geiger counter registers 800 USVHR along the old canal banks. We filter with charcoal, sand, and homemade ion exchange resin, each batch tested against our handheld spectrometer. But even the smallest leakage, the tiniest breach in our filters, can poison an entire camp. Our daily allotment has shrunk to just 500 milers metered of purified water per person, half the bare minimum needed to stave off dehydration in this heat. Radiation has decimated crops. The fields outside town, once amber with wheat, are barren. What? Seedlings do sprout carry radioactive isotopes absorbed from soil. Cesium-137 with a half-life of 30 years. Strontium-90 that mimics calcium in bones. We've resorted to scavenging canned goods. Dented tins of peaches and beans that taste like tin. Fresh produce is a luxury. Any green vegetable we find must be soaked for hours, then boiled in multiple water changes to reduce contaminants. We ration protein carefully. 1 small can of tuna or a handful of dried beans per person every 3 days. The generator oil runs low. I traded broadcast time with a convoy for a 5-gallon drum of used motor oil. But that only buys us 2 weeks of intermittent power. Solar panels are useless beneath the fallout cloud. Batteries are hoarded for dosimeters, radios, prosthetics. Every watt counts. I run the transmitter for exactly 30 minutes twice a day, so people know where to find fresh water or a safe path through the hot spots. The reactor's cooling systems failed under the first wave of climate-induced blackouts. Temperatures spiked. Blue-white zirconium fires erupted. Pressure valves ruptured. Radioactive steam escaped through weakened welds, forming what engineers call a China syndrome. Core material melting through steel into earth and groundwater. Windborne particles rose into the troposphere. Iodine-131, with an 8-day half-life, gave us acute thyroid poisoning. Cesium-137 spread contamination for decades. As the meltdown worsened, wildfires ignited across contaminated forests, releasing aged radionuclides locked in soil back into the air. Every ash plume became a toxic breath. When radiation spikes, above 500 USV OHR, seal your shelter. Use plastic sheeting and duct tape to cover cracks. Close all vents. Turn off fans. Do not draw in outside air. Dedicate one small space for decontamination. Leave shoes at the door. Wipe clothing with damp cloth shower if possible. Keep this room atmosphere separate from the rest of your shelter. If you have access, take 130 mg of Ki daily to saturate your thyroid with non-radioactive iodine. This prevents uptake of iodine-131. Do not share tablets indiscriminately. Follow guidelines. 1 tablet per adult per day. Layered filters, coarse sand, fine sand, activated charcoal, ion exchange resin. Test output water with a TDS meter and Geiger counter. Boil the filtered water for at least 5 minutes. Use your Geiger counter to map radiation. Walk at a steady pace. Pausing even moments can spike exposure. Mark safe corridors. 100 USV HR and danger zones. 500 USV HR with chalk on walls or stones on the ground. Wash produce in filtered water 3 times. Peel root vegetables vigorously. Discard outer leaves of greens. Cook at high temperatures. Radiation levels decrease with boiling, though never to 0. Avoid foraging near water bodies or burned forests. I hear their stories on the air. Maria in Grid 4B, coughing blood, her lungs scarred by inhaled plutonium dust. She has 5 days of Ki tablets left. Samir, a father of 2, scavenged too close to the plant perimeter. His hair fell out in clumps, and the local doctor says bone marrow damage will kill him before radiation burns do. People barter childhood photos for iodine. Some sell their own blood for filtering experiments. Camps fracture under stress. Paranoia seeps in. He was coughing. He must be contaminated. They left their shoes inside, locked them out. Accusations fly like shrapnel. Trust is the first casualty in radiation's reach. I whisper into the mic. Remember, we're all in this together. No one chooses to be contaminated. But I know fear is the strongest contagion. This meltdown isn't a single moment in time. It's a decades-long siege. I track the decay. Curve's iodine-131 will fade to safe levels in weeks, but cesium-137 and strontium-90 will linger for generations. The ash storm season approaches. High-altitude winds will drop fresh fallout on the southern camps. A dust storm could carry lethal particles hundreds of miles. Fuel convoys run through these corridors, risking every drop of diesel for food and medicines. Raiders target them. They know that whoever controls supply lines controls life itself. Yesterday, I caught the transmission of a convoy under ambush. Gunfire, screams, then silence. No one answered our distress call. We marked the site on our map, but there's nothing left to do but warn the next convoy. I speak numbers because numbers are concrete. I tell them, LD 5030, 4, SV, Sieverts. Over 30 days will kill 50% of those exposed without treatment. Safe. Exposure. 1 MSV, millisievert per year, is normal background. Right now, we live in swaths measuring in hundreds of MSV per day. Decay equation, AT, Tau A0 E, LT, where L alto LN2, T12. For cesium-137, T12, Hawker 30 years. For iodine-131, T12, 8 days. Use this to plan food caches and safe returns. Inverse square law. Double your distance from the source, and you reduce exposure by 4x. Choose campsites as far from evacuation routes and the plant's coordinates as possible. When I explain this, I hear protests. I don't have a meter. So I broadcast DIY Geiger. Expose a strip of photographic film in a sealed bag overnight. Then compare darkening to reference samples. Or use a cloud chamber built from rubbing alcohol and dry ice. if you can find dry ice. I once believed we could adapt, that human ingenuity would outpace disaster. I even tried to grow mushrooms on irradiated hay. They sprouted, but the first harvest tested at 1/200 USVHR, a feast for death. I learned that adaptation has limits. There are thresholds beyond which life can't repair itself, yet I broadcast these failures too. We tried, I say. We failed. Try something else. Because silence is consent. If I don't share, our losses, people die repeating the same mistakes. Reinforce old buildings with lead panels from medical facilities. Stockpile KI, water and food. Every reading you take extends the map of safety. Text it via radio. Use frequency modulation to piggyback data on voice transmissions. Children, pregnant women, the elderly, they absorb and retain more radiation. Ensure they're sheltered first. Improvised dialysis units can filter out cesium-137. From phone batteries and car alternators, you can rig up basic centrifuges to spin blood cells, reducing contamination. The crisis isn't on the horizon, it's at our doorstep. Radiation doesn't rest. It seeps, drifts, settles. Tomorrow's wind could carry a fresh cloud. Tomorrow's rain could dissolve decades-old fallout into our drinking water. Yesterday's solutions won't work today. So I pedal the generator. Again. My arms strain, my lungs burn, but the transmitter springs to life. I speak into the microphone. A flurry of data, warnings, and tiny lifelines of hope. This is Rowan Vale, calling every survivor within range. Radiation levels at Grid 7E have spiked to 1/500 USVHR. Seal your shelters. Water at Meridian. Well tests at 120 USVHR. Boil and filter if you must. New planting technique from Camp Delta. Soak seeds in KI solution for 24 hours. Contact Salim for details. If you can move, relocate to the valley 2 miles north. Radiation there has fallen below 500 USVHR since yesterday's wind shift. Together, we still have a chance. Send me your readings and your stories. Stay vigilant. Stay alive. I cut the broadcast. Silence returns, heavy as lead. But I know the signal is out there, threading through the fallout like light through storm clouds. We're still breathing, still measuring, still fighting. The crisis rages on, but so do we. And as long as we can share what we learn, survival remains more than a memory. I tighten the straps on my backpack and step outside, just as the sun cracks the horizon in a haze of radioactive amber. Today marks day 23 since Reactor 4's final rupture, and the world feels more hostile than ever. The generator sputters its last breaths behind me, its fuel reserves exhausted. I won't broadcast again until I can trade for oil, if I can find anyone willing to be water rattles in my canteen. 3 sips left. Food stores are even thinner. 2 tins of beans, half a jerky strip, and a handful of scavenged grains that crackle between my teeth. I rationed today's meager breakfast for tomorrow's start. I know the rules. Dehydration kills faster than radiation. Still, every time I reach for that canteen, I feel the weight of a dying world in my gut. I follow the old irrigation ditch toward Meridian Well, the last relatively safe water source within 10 miles. The pipeline crumpled in the quake, but groundwater still seeps through fractured bedrock. Camp Meridian's sign, half buried in ash, winks at me as I crest the hill. Behind it, the camp sprawls. Patched tents, solar stills, a ramshackle guard, tower. 2 guards nod when they see me, rifles slung low but ready. Valed, one of them mutters. My radio handle. I offer a can of tuna in exchange for a liter of filtered water. The guard counts 3 coins, scrap metal discs we press, in makeshift mints, and lifts the container from the supply tent. I swallow greedily, tasting chlorine and earth, and imagine the grains of sand sliding down my throat. It's enough to keep me moving. Ardor. A week ago, raiders cornered a convoy near the riverbed. I tracked the battle on the backup radio. 6 trucks ambushed, half the drivers shot, supplies looted. Their leader, a woman named Raven who paints her face with soot, broadcasts propaganda on her own frequency, calls it Justice for the Ashen. She claims to redistribute resources from the hoarders to the needy, but her raids leave nothing but corpses and broken generators. Today, I glimpse dust columns on the horizon. 2 vehicles, their grille plates blackened with makeshift armor. Raven's convoy. My heart thunders. If they find the camp dry of water, they'll move on. But if they find the generator, they'll burn it for parts. I shouldn't stay to watch. Yet I slip off the trail, crouch behind a shattered wall, and lift my binoculars. The lead truck stops. Raven steps down, rifle in hand, scanning the camp. She's taller than I imagined, her silhouette jagged against the sky, dreadlocks matted with ash. Her followers fan out, searching tents, tossing pots and pans aside. One prisoner, a haggard man in a mechanic's jumpsuit, cries out for mercy. I swallow bile. There's no room for mercy now. I radio Camp Meridian under a different frequency. Valid calling Meridian. Raider convoy inbound. Evacuate the well house, seal it, I'll draw them off. There's a crackle, then silence. I hope they heard. I jog down the shallow gully, kicking up ash. Raven's voice crackles through my earpiece. Who's there? Show yourself, broadcast rat. My pulse spikes, my hiding spot tenuous. I bite back panic, extend my voice. Raven, over here, come claim your prize. Heavy boots pound the broken concrete. I pivot and sprint toward an overturned tanker, my breath ragged. Bullets pepper the metal around me. I duck behind the tanker's curve, prop my rifle on its dented side, and fire a warning shot. The raiders hesitate, enough for the camp's sentries to slip into hidden caches below ground. I can almost hear their muted footsteps. Raven emerges, scanning for me. I stand and wave, baiting her into the open. She stalks forward, revolver raised. I hold my breath. Then a gust of wind whips ash into my face, blinding. Raven stumbles and swears. I fire at her truck's tire, a single shot that hisses as it deflates. The truck lurches. In the chaos, I dive away, sprinting back toward the camp's hidden entrance. While Raven's followers argue, I reach the well house and shoulder the door shut. The latch clicks. Inside, I find the camp's engineer, Lena, hurriedly removing the filter elements. You're late, she hisses. I slam the door, drop my pack, and help her stack filter cartridges into their metal cases. Each one is precious. Every layer of charcoal and resin counted. I emerge to find the raiders gone, track marks leading east, away from the camp. Raven's voice echoes once. Enjoy your water while it lasts, radio rat. But the real storm is brewing. A furnace gale swirling ash from the north, the vanguard of a radiation-laden dust storm. It tastes like metal on the wind. We have hours before it hits. I broadcast a warning to every survivor within range. Duck in your shelters, seal your doors, cover your vents. Hands grip the radio mic in panic. Sobs and curses fill the frequency. I repeat the instructions with as much calm as I can muster, then break connection and scramble to reinforce the camp's plastic sheeting barriers. Our generator is still alive. Just, if the wind tears it free, the camp dies. A shriek of wind rips across the field. I hold the plastic against the frame, nails slipping in ash. Behind me, Lena straps down tools and hurries north to secure the solar still. I shout to her, but she can't hear over the gale. I watch her silhouette disappear. Fate unknown. The storm drives me into the broadcast shack. I close the door, lock it, and crouch beside the table that holds the microphone. My Geiger counter ticks steadily. 300 US VHR inside, but the reading outside will soar. I push my back against the door and rest my rifle across my knees. Then a crackle on the emergency uplink. Lena's voice, urgent and distant. Rowan, thank God. A group of us 10 souls found a buried cistern 50 miles east. It's feeding on an underground aquifer shielded from fallout. But we're trapped by ash drifts and high radiation. We need help clearing a path. 10. People can't dig through 50 feet of ash before the next dust storm. 10 people. A group of 10 is more than I have in manpower or fuel. 50 miles across terrain that's become one vast radioactive wasteland. The cistern could be salvation for dozens of camps, but the journey feels like suicide. I weigh my dwindling ration. Water for a 2-day trek, beans for the same. One spare filter. My mind flashes to the raider attack. Our defenses are shaky. If I leave, the camp could fall. If I stay, Lena's team may die of thirst. The radio falls silent in my hand as I realize I'm the fulcrum on which this fragile world pivots. As the storm howls outside, I remember an old map fragment tucked in my journal, sketched by a technician who survived the initial meltdown. It shows a subterranean duct system beneath the old city sewers, feeding into a vaulted water reservoir. The symbol is smudged, but the coordinates align roughly with the cistern Lena mentions. Could they be the same? Or is one a myth, the other salvation? I've heard whispers among scavengers of the Vault, a pre-war emergency reservoir designed to survive bombs and blackouts. If I can find it, we might have a lasting water source. But how to locate it? The technician's notes include cryptic references to Level 4B and Control Node Hydra. Without power or digital archives, I'd have to navigate underground, at blind. And each step beneath the earth risks collapse, gas pockets, and radiation pockets where fallout settled. I imagine the darkness beneath streets I once walked as a child, now an uncharted underworld. My heart pounds in time with the Geiger clicks. I'm torn between duty to Lena's group and the camp's immediate safety. Hope warps into desperation. Maybe I could split the difference. Leave a skeleton crew to guard the camp, pedal the generator non-stop, and head east at dawn. But I know human wills snap under stress. Strain either the camp or the rescue team, and both could fall. Hope feels like a mirage, beautiful from afar, lethal up close. Yet without it, we're ashes and dust. I close my eyes, recall Mara's laugh, Salim's gentle hands planting seeds, Lena's steady voice through the static. Each memory a fractured shard of motivation. I clamp them into a mosaic. Why I fight. Who I fight for. I pick up the microphone. This is Rowan Vale, I say, voice low but firm. Camp Meridian needs volunteers. Fuel and water rations will be shared equally. We'll escort Lena's team to the cistern and investigate a rumored underground reservoir beneath the old city. We leave at first light. Anyone willing to risk everything for a chance at real water, come forward. Silence answers me, thick as the storm outside. Then finally, a reply, soft and urgent. Ma'am, I'll go, name's Torres. Pulled 2 shifts in the lines back when I was a water dispatcher. I know pipes. Then another voice, anxious. I'm in, Clara Medic. I can treat radiation burns. A trickle becomes a promise. 5 voices by the time the storm subsides. Step outside at dawn into a world reborn in ashes. The storm is past, leaving a heavy hush. The air tastes of metal. My Geiger clicks at 900 USVHR, but we breathe through cloth filters and shielded hoods. Torres, Clara, and 3 others, Jin. The mechanics, Salim the gardener and Marisol, a former cartographer, fall in behind me. Each carries a pack of rations, water, tools, and a fierce glint of hope. I lead them toward the eastern horizon, following the old canal's bed, chasing Lena's coordinates. We pick our way over razor-sharp ash drifts, footprints replaced by swirling dust in minutes. My feet burn through borrowed boots, my throat scratches with every breath. I press onward, forward, always forward. Behind us lies Camp Meridian, my home, my anchor, and ahead, a mystery that could save us all or drown us in false promise. And with each step, the world grows smaller, more urgent. The crisis tightens its grip, but so does our resolve. We carry our fragile hope on rifles and water canteens, on half-sealed shelters and smudged maps. We are alive, and as long as we move toward something, anything, we refuse to become dust. I led our ragged line of 6 through the skeletal remains of what once was downtown. Salim's lamp cut swaths through the darkness of a collapsed subway entrance, revealing twisted steel beams and puddles turned milky with radiation. The blasted city above us groaned under the wind, but down here the air was eerily still, an ancient crypt waiting to exhale its secrets. We found the hatch by Marisol's map coordinates. A circular steel door half buried beneath rubble, jagged glyphs stamped into its rim. Clara knelt to brush aside ash and spiderweb algae, tracing the emblem of the Old World Water Authority, a drop encircled by a laurel. My heart hammered as Torres levered the door open. Inside lay a spiraling corridor lined with lead-lined seams whispering of hope. I flicked on my headlamp and stepped across the threshold, into silence, into promise. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. Concrete walls arched overhead, pipes thicker than my torso snaked along them, valves stationary like the fingers of a sleeping giant. At the far end, a vaulted tank glistened, its surface still. I crossed the floor, footsteps echoing, and ran. A Geiger counter along its side. 12 USV CHR, almost background levels. The reservoir beneath our feet had been shielded from fallout, fed by a deep aquifer untouched by radiation. I pressed my palm against the cool metal. Water, 1 million gallons of it, waiting. No sooner had I cracked the valve kit than I heard the distant roar of engines. Raven's convoy had tracked our radio transmissions underground. Their voices snarled through the comms. "You can't hide from us, radio rat. Water belongs to the strong." My pulse spiked. If they breached the vault first, they'd set the valves wide, flooding the tunnels or siphoning every last drop. We had to act, now. "Torres," I hissed, "can you rig the pump? We need to get water to the surface before they arrive." He nodded, sweat beading at his temples. Clara and Salim moved to secure the corridor entrance, stacking crates and barrels like a makeshift barricade. Marisol guided the rest to safety in a side gallery. As Torres knelt to connect hoses, I realized the valve key was on Raven's belt, dangling from her hand as she climbed down a ladder into the hatch. I had two choices: help Torres finish the rig and risk Raven cutting us off, or intercept Raven and wrestle the key away, letting the water sit untapped until reinforcements could arrive. Either decision would cost lives. I sprinted up the ladder, into the hatch just as Raven ducked under the rim, rifle raised. Ash fell around us in a slow drizzle. She sneered, rifle trained on my chest. "Drop the key, Blade," she hissed, reverting to her old call sign as if she knew me. Memories flashed. The convoy we ambushed weeks ago, the desperation in her eyes when she begged for water. Now she stood between me and humanity's lifeline. I froze. Seconds stretched. Then a groan from below shook the tunnel. The barricade trembled. Torres's voice crackled. "They're hitting the barricade, gonna break through." Raven's aim wavered. "You could join me," she spat. "Share the vault, or stay here and die." My no-breather mask hissed with each breath. I recalled Mara's unwavering faith in science, Salim's tender faith in seeds, Lena's faith in camaraderie. There was no place for alliances rooted in violence. Not here. I lunged. Raven's rifle rang out. The bullet gouged a crater in the hatch wall. I slammed into her, wrenching the key from her belt. She snarled, clawed at my jacket, but I twisted away and sprinted past her. Key clenched in my fist, heart thudding. I descended into the vault chamber, the lamplight dancing off silver pipes. Torres stood beside the tank, breathless. Clara held, a revolver trained up the tunnel, eyes wide. I slid the key into the valve wheel and turned with all my strength. The hiss of long dormant pipes awakened. Water spat from the hose, then roared in a steady arc into a waiting drum. Light danced on droplets like bands of hope. Around us, the vault seemed to exhale relief. Or maybe it was my own lungs loosening for the first time in hours. A gunshot cracked behind us. Raven's voice echoed, angry and defeated. She emerged at the corridor mouth, smoking pistol in hand. "Stock your shelves," she snarled. "Don't think this changes anything." Clara's revolver tracked her every step. I met Raven's gaze. "This changes everything," I said. "Water belongs to everyone, or no one." She sneered, then turned and disappeared up the ladder, leaving only echoing footsteps. We stayed until midnight, pumping water into barrels and cisterns. Each jug we filled felt like victory, proof that the world could still sustain life. When The drums were full. We sealed the vault behind us, locked the hatch, and marked its coordinates on Marisol's map. We carried barrels one by one up the ladder, through the hatch, and into the ash-strewn night. At dawn, we stood atop the hatch with 5 full barrels of pure, cold water. The furnace sun burned above, but a breeze ruffled my hair, filled my lungs with the taste of victory and possibility. I thought of Mara's smile, of the day I first believed in balance. I realized then that science and hope are not enemies. They are partners. We are the stewards of this world, charged with rebuilding what we broke. I lifted a barrel, offered it to Lena, who had waited at the surface with the camp's survivors, gaunt faces, hopeful eyes. She clasped my arm, voice thick. "You did it," she whispered. I shook my head. We did it. As we led the barrels toward Camp Meridian, my Geiger counter ticked a warning. A fresh fallout plume drifting from the north. Raven would return, backed by more guns. The dust storm season intensifies tomorrow. And the vault, once our salvation, could become our tomb if its location is betrayed. But in that moment, each step felt lighter. The climactic pivot wasn't just finding water, it was choosing to share it, to bind our lives to others. The vault had given us lifeblood. Now it was up to us to decide whether to hoard it or to pour it into the parched throats of a dying world. I glanced at my companions, Torres, Clara, Salim, Marisol, and I knew, whatever came next, we would face it together. Because hope, once sparked, can ignite a movement. And as long as even one voice broadcasts that truth, the world stands a chance. The barrels of water arrived at Camp Meridian, just as dawn streaked the sky with bruised purple and ash-laden gold. For the first time in weeks, the generator ran without sputtering. A steady hum that felt like a heartbeat returning. Survivors gathered in the yard, dusty faces pressed close, eyes widening at the sight of fresh water glinting in the early light. We formed a queue, children with sunken cheeks, mothers swaddling infants, elders leaning heavily on canes. Each person carried a battered cup or canteen, but none dared drink until I spoke. I climbed onto a crate beside the well house, the barrels stacked behind me like sentinels of salvation. My throat was raw from shouting through dust storms and radiation alerts, but now my voice came soft, almost reluctant. "This water," I said, holding up a clear cup, "is what hope tastes like." A murmur ran through the crowd. I dipped my finger into the cup, cool, clean, and touched my lips. "Drink," I said, and they did. In the hours that followed, the camp transformed. Wherever there was dust and despair, new life sprouted. A dog limped into the yard, tongue lolling, and curled gratefully at the well's base. A group of children danced in a circle, splashing water on each other, their laughter echoing off broken walls. Even the guards, hardened faces marked by radiation burns, they cracked smiles as they filled canteens to the brim. We wasted no time. I organized teams. Clara and her medics administered iodine tablets and checked radiation levels. Torres led the pump crew in setting up a permanent siphon from the vault supply. Salim and our impromptu gardening co-op prepared soil beds with crushed charcoal and compost from the camp latrine. Lena rigged rain barrels beneath the weakest points of roofing, harvesting the first drops of toxic rain to be cleanly filtered, an experiment born from necessity. Within 3 days, the camp's water ration rose from 500 milliliter to 2 L per person per day. Showers returned, crude, but life-affirming. Fields once brown and cracked bore pale green sprouts beneath greenhouse, canopies fashioned from plastic sheeting. We even managed to plant the first seeds, peas, barley, lupine, varieties Salim swore could tolerate low radiation soil. Yet even as hope spread, I felt the weight of choices made. Raven's raid had been thwarted, but at the cost of revealing the vault's location to more broadcasts. Word of our success traveled fast, too fast. Within a week, 3 separate groups pinged our frequency. One desperate band seeking asylum, another camp demanding water shipment for lying in wait along trade routes, a third group of scavengers, threatening to take what they needed by force. I realized that salvation is a double-edged sword. The more you share, the more you attract the hungry. I spent long nights tallying supplies, drafting broadcast protocols. We will distribute water fairly. All incoming parties must offer skills or supplies in exchange. Any violence will be met with force. Each clause felt both necessary and brutal. Rules carved in ash to stave off the law of the gun. I used to believe that knowledge alone could save us, that if we understood the mechanics of disaster, we could engineer our way out. Now I know it takes more. Leadership tempered by compassion, boundaries drawn in the right places, and the willingness to make hard calls. When the scavengers arrived 2 nights later, 12 men and women armed with scavenged rifles, I met them at the gate. They demanded water. In their eyes, I saw hunger, fear, and something darker. Entitlement. I didn't hesitate. Clara and Torres flanked me. Lena and Salim stood ready at the generator. Your group has no trade to offer, I told the leader, a tall man with a scar across one cheek. Water is life here. Show me your skills. Medicine, mechanics, engineering, or leave. He sneered, and for a moment I expected violence. Then his shoulders slumped. I can fix pumps, he mumbled. I was a mechanic. I'll work. I nodded. Begin at first light. He bowed his head. It was the closest I've felt to choosing mercy. Late that night, I wandered back to the hatch entrance, now concealed beneath fresh planks and a tarp. I knelt and traced my fingers over the wood, remembering Raven's face as I seized. The key, her conviction twisted by desperation. I thought of every life lost to radiation, every camp burned for a jug of water. I thought of Mara, her unwavering belief in a sustainable future. And I understood that this world won't heal overnight. It will heal through small acts repeated, sharing water, planting seeds, teaching a child to map fallout patterns. The earth above remains scarred. Every rain brings acid and ash. Every wind carries the whisper of fallout. But beneath the crust, the vault holds a reservoir untouched, a reminder that even in the darkest times, life can lie waiting, dormant, until we choose to nurture it. A month after the vault's opening, I ventured beyond the camp perimeter with Salim. We followed the old canal beds, now trickling with filtered water seeping from the vault's overflow channel. Along the banks we found patches of moss, pale green and resilient, thriving where we'd sown spores months before. Tiny frogs emerged from under rocks, blinking in the harsh daylight. Each sighting felt miraculous, as though nature itself was offering a benediction. Yet I saw the limits. Trees still stood charred, their rings blackened with radiation scars. Birdsong was a rarity, reserved for early mornings when the vault's outflow kept the immediate area cooler and cleaner. We clustered seeds of native grasses in small hollows of mud, knowing full well that not all would germinate. But we tried, and that was enough. I no longer peddle my generator alone. I've formed a council with representatives from each skill group, mechanics, medics, gardeners, engineers, and even former raiders who've sworn peace. Together, we plan water distribution, radiation mapping, and seasonal planting. Our weekly broadcast is no longer just my voice. It's a chorus of survivors sharing data, advice, and stories. When I speak, I sound different, no longer alone. Radio rat, but a steward of a fragile community. Inside, my grief has not vanished. It's etched into my bones. But I carry it as fuel, not anchor. Each loss, Mara's sacrifice, the Raiders' raids, reminds me why I fight. Each success, the vault's bounty, the seedlings that push through ash, reminds me that resilience is woven from many threads. Science, solidarity, and slow, steady hope. The sun rose this morning through a haze of violet. I climbed the guard tower with Clara and Marisol to check radiation gauges. Readings hovered around 50 US VHR, still elevated, but manageable within our sealed shelters. Down below, the first greenhouse tomato blossoms peeked through plastic. A symbol, perhaps trivial in the grand scheme. But to us, it was proof we could coax life from ruin. I tapped the microphone. This is Rowan Vale of Camp Meridian. To everyone listening, water flows, crops sprout, and our community stands. We've survived the worst so far, but the road ahead is long. Hold fast, share what you can, and know, even in a world breathing ash, we breathe on. We endure. I cut the broadcast and watched the morning light spill across the cracked earth. We still face storms, radiation plumes, raiders, resource scarcity. But we have a haven now, a spark of renewal. The falling action is not an ending. It's the settling of dust before the next great struggle. And we are ready. I stand at the edge of Camp Meridian's new canal. The vault's overflow trickling past my boots like a promise whispered in the dark. The water is cold. Colder than I remember rivers ever being, but it carries life. I cup my hands and let it slip through my fingers, watching each droplet catch the pale sunrise. Behind me, the green shoots bend in a gentle breeze. Fragile, banners heralding the first true hint of recovery in this blasted land. Hope is a fragile thing. I thought I understood that when Mara died, when reactor steam boiled the air and voices went silent. But hope isn't a single spark. It's a constellation, built of many small lights. The vault was the brightest of those lights. But the seedlings, the council, the laughter of children chasing water droplets through the ash, all those glimmer too, and together they keep the darkness at bay. The scars of this world will not fade. Radiation will linger in soil and bone long after our grandchildren's grandchildren have forgotten what blue sky means. Dust storms still sweep in on the wind, and raider bands still roam beyond our fences. There are days when the generator dies, when the pump clanks and groans and sputters, when I lie awake listening to the Geiger clicks in the silent hours and wonder if tomorrow is another luxury. And yet tomorrow will come. We have started mapping new routes, underground tunnels and sheltered ravines, guided by Marisol's cartography and Torres's memory of old pipelines. We've traded for solar panels at the desert outpost, narrowing our reliance on oil. Salim's mushroom beds have become communal greenhouses, and Clara's medics are training apprentices to treat radiation burns. Every day, someone learns something, fixes something, plants something. The community grows not just in numbers, but in skill and resolve. I admit, I once believed that survival meant clinging to what we had left. Now I know survival demands growth, adaptation, and above all, generosity. Water is still precious, but we share it. Knowledge is still risky, but we teach it. Trust is still rare, but we build it, shard by shard. In this new world, compassion isn't weakness. It's the only currency that outlasts rust and radioactivity. The greatest victory of all may be this. We have renewed our capacity to dream. Last night, children lay on patched tarps and watched the stars through holes in the roof, naming constellations from a world that no longer exists. They whispered of oceans and forests, of cities that pulsed with life. I listened and felt something unlock inside me, a memory of wonder I thought had died on the wind. I won't pretend that we're safe. Some nights I still bolt upright at phantom alarms. I still wake to the taste of ash on my tongue and the fear that the vault's doors may creak open under the weight of desperation. But each morning, I choose to stand. Each dawn, I choose to pedal the generator, fill the barrels, map the fallout, speak into the static. Because even if hope is fragile, it is also stubborn, and it can grow stronger each time we nurture it. So here's my final message, broadcast into the residue of the old world to every survivor tuning in. We are still here, not whole, not healed, but alive. We have found water in the bowels of the earth, and we have planted green shoots in the ash. We are learning to rebuild, not the world that was, but the world that can be. Share what you have, a seed, a skill, a story. Protect what you can, the weak, the curious, the future. Fight when you must, but tend life whenever you can. The vault beneath our feet gave us water. Our hands gave each other hope. Keep breathing, keep believing, keep broadcasting. For as long as one voice speaks, tomorrow remains possible. I step back from the canal's edge, shoulders straight against the wind. The new day spreads across the wreckage like a pale promise. and I carry it inside me, an ember that refuses to go out. The struggle continues, endlessly unfolding, and I will keep fighting it, one petal, one broadcast, one heartbeat at a time. Because where there is breath, there is possibility, and as long as we dare to hope, the world has a chance to be born anew.